I like it. I like it. Well, cool. You have such a great story. I love what you do, and I'm looking forward to delving into it. So thank you for taking a minute out today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, and I want to begin with something that probably affected your business model. We're on the 4-year anniversary of this pandemic, and I'm curious if we go back to when it started, how did you survive that time period, and how did it subsequently change you?
So there was a lot going on during that time. My husband also does this as well. And we did our initial training to learn how to be trainers in the bank methodology in January of 2020.
Yeah.
In fact, it was the day we flew out was the day Kobe Bryant's helicopter went down because we were hearing that news as we were headed to the airport, kind of set the stage for timing. And so when we did our training, that was in January. So Arizona started shutting down in March. Our business we could only do in person at that point in time. So it kind of put us on a flat out halt,
Yeah.
but it also wound up being a bonus on that because there was lots of learning and training that I could actually focus on during that time period.
Yeah.
So I was able to get in, several of the other layers of training that I needed as a trainer. Um, Also during that time period, we were closing on a house that we were having built. We had started that in September of 19. We didn't know whether or not we were even going to be able to sign the paperwork for our mortgage. Then once we were able to get that completed, we didn't know if we were going to be able to get our keys because that's when everything really shut down. And you were supposed to, that's when the 6 feet distance was starting to be maintained. So it's like, well, we're not even sure how we're going to get you your keys
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
they can't hand them to us, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, that's wild. I remember moving into our house. We moved in on January 1, and it was a pretty bustling area. It's called Lee Summit. And then when everything shut down, it was just so eerie. Everything was so strange about that time, you know.
Yeah,
So it's wild.
definitely.
Well, and I sometimes feel like when I'm walking around, there was a book for a while. There was a show on HBO based on the book called Leave Left Behind, and it was about the rapture. And I think sometimes just in this modern day and era, all of us that survived it are the ones that kind of got through it because there was so much heavy that was going on. I mean, it was a crazy time. It all melted together. It's hard to keep up with, but we're in better times now. So I'm curious if I put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and one of the kids was curious about what you did on a daily basis and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How would you answer that child?
So for them, I would say I help you make friends and understand your friends well so that you
Okay.
fight less, so that you get along and make decisions better.
Okay. So what did you want to be in the third grade?
Let's see. I probably wanted to be about the time I was saying I wanted to be a teacher or a nurse. My mom
Okay.
was a teacher, my aunt was a nurse, so I picked those at that point in time. I did wind up as an adult changing careers into being a nurse
Okay.
and then found out they're also teachers. So there was a lot of teaching that I was doing with being a nurse. So I got to do both.
Yeah. Well,
And
how
now
did
I
we
teach this.
so how did we get to this point? So I'm curious. Take me back to where you were born and raised, and what were the seeds that were put into you to evolve into this career placement that you're at right now?
Ooh, I probably didn't have seeds placed because my parents were very traditional. You get a job, you work for 40 plus years, you retire.
Yeah.
Um, I had started in that path. So, I graduated high school. I went to school to be a travel agent. I did that up until right before my second child was born. There's another situation where the world changed and that would have changed my job. But I had left in November of, uh, 2000. And then September 2001 changed the travel world completely. I
Yeah.
was already out when that happened, and I'm somewhat grateful because I imagine the travel agents were all pulling their hair out because everybody was trying to figure out how to get where they needed to go.
Yeah.
Um, so I was a stay-at-home mom for a while, and then I got the call to be a nurse, and started going to school for that. Became a nurse, did that for a few years. During that time period, I picked up and tried several different multi-level marketing companies. And the most recent one that I had done, there was a training that happened. And I learned about the bank methodology. And I went, oh, this is why I suck at what I'm doing and why nobody wants to buy from me. I totally got it in that moment. And so I had wanted to learn more so that I could help build my team, help keep our team cohesive, the one that I was part of with our upline. And then I found out everything that I could do with, well, not necessarily everything I could do with bank, but I saw a bigger picture with it. And I'm like, wow, I want to do this instead. Yeah, I still actually dabble with the other business, but not as much. We maintain the customers we had. Yeah. So that kind of path. My parents would have had nothing to do with multi-level marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I still get upturned noses from my family anytime I talk about any of those businesses. They're like, ugh.
So you've had to have strong people around you that you've admired. Who would you consider a role model or a hero for you in your life, as highly driven as you are?
Hmm. There's lots of people. I would say one of the ones I'm diving deeper into at this point is Robin Sharma.
Mhm.
He wrote the 5 a.m. Club, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, and quite a few other books. So he's a personal development person.
Yeah.
And the leaders of our company, for one, have started adopting a lot of his stuff and they've been training with him personally.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of filtering down to us. And I picked some of that up. Being a blueprint, the 5 a.m. Club makes sense to me because it gives me a system and a structure to work with.
Yeah.
Um, and so I tend to follow into that. And I'm trying to drop more into the heart space of what he talks about because I'm such an in my head person.
Yeah.
I have a hard time dropping here and letting this lead. So working with his stuff is helping me to get closer to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you could meet anybody alive right now on the planet that you find fascinating or inspirational, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
It's funny, the name that popped in my head as soon as you said it, I'm conflicted about, but it's who popped in my head, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with everything the man does, but he's a freaking genius. You know, he's got this mind that most people don't have and a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah.
Um, but his mindset to go do and get it done at all costs is something I admire.
Yeah.
And when I say at all costs, I'm not talking about the negative side of all costs, but you know, you're giving up part of yourself or you're pouring all of yourself into, you know, as he was working on Tesla, you know, all the hard work that went into that, or SpaceX, sorry. I'm thinking about the book I listened to on Audible of his, that was a biography about him and everything that happened with SpaceX and the fact that what he demanded of his people, he was also doing himself.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you know, that was working like 20 hours a day, sleeping at your desk for a couple hours and getting up and doing more.
Yeah.
But naturally, I don't have that kind of grit and determination. And I admire that. I don't want
Yeah.
to ever have that level of grit and determination. I want to take care of my body a little better, but
Yeah. Yeah.
just the get it done that he has and the genius in that mind,
Yeah. So
if that
you
makes
have to give a lot of really good advice to people. What's the best advice that you've ever gotten?
sense. So the one that probably kept my life on a good track was my boyfriend at the time. His dad said, "Don't ever get married to solve your problems," because that was the mistake he made in his first marriage.
Yeah.
That piece of advice saved me from saying yes to his son when his son turned around and proposed. We'd already been broken up for a while.
Yeah.
And then one night, I worked for TWA at this time, so this goes tells you how far back this may go.
Yeah.
Um, One night he's like, let's go to Vegas and get married because his dad was a pilot for them. So he could fly free for as well. So we could have just taken off and went.
Yeah.
And I actually just kind of sat there for a minute. And I'm not a really religious person, but I said, is this right? And I got a resounding no. And I'm like, okay. And then his dad's advice also popped into my head at that point in time. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
that would have been marrying him would have been the worst thing I could have done for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. What is your motivation every day to do the work that you do, to help people and to also evolve as a professional yourself? What is that drive and motivation for you?
Originally, the drive was money, but as I do this more and people talk to me about after having done a training with the group that I tend to train in a group situation where there's multiple of us doing the training at the same time.
Yeah.
But I had run into one of our trainers recently, and she told me because of my part of the training for that personality type, it's what her husband is. And she goes, I get him. She goes, I honestly think this you're talking about that may have very well saved our marriage.
Oh,
And I was like, wow. I mean, I've heard these stories. I've never been the one responsible for having that come back. So it just really cemented with me that, yes, this is making a difference. I'm making a difference,
yeah.
which was huge. I mean, she almost made me cry, and I'm not a cryy person.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, of all of the clients that you've helped with your business, what's one of your favorite client success stories?
Hmm. I want to say my favorite one isn't my story, unfortunately, but I love it because it really kind of demonstrates. And for those who need numbers and more of a visual, this may work. Um, One of our trainers, he is a real estate agent, and he already had a great close rate, taking people from the initial talk and getting them to list with him. And I'm going to have the numbers not completely right, but he was closing at like 30% prior to learning the methodology. And then after he started implementing it and using it consistently, it went to 80, I want to say 82%. So that's a pretty big jump, and it's way above what the national average is for real estate agents.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, just meeting people at what's most important for them, even though it may be nothing to us, can be huge in business, in personal relationships. So yeah, for business, I love his story. And
Yeah.
his company uses disc most of the time. And they didn't want to switch. But when they saw what he was doing, the broker, the guy who owned his agency, he's like, okay, now I'm listening. Tell me more.
Yeah.
And so he's been training all of their agents, and his name has gotten out there, and other real estate agents are kind of wanting to use him as well,
Wow.
which I don't think his broker's as happy about.
Yeah. 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 So let me ask you this. Let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into that younger version of you that was working for TWA, and you can give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life so far. What
Mm.
advice would you impart on that young version of you?
I'm trying to formulate the right words here.
Sure.
Because at that point in time, I was very judgmental, could only see things from my perspective, my point of view, or what had been imparted on me from my parents. I hadn't grown into who I was, what I felt, what I believed. And because I was quite a bit like my own parents, I assumed everybody else was like me.
Yeah.
Not so much. My need to be on time and expecting everybody else to be on time, not so much for everybody else. So if I could tell myself, you know, not everybody is the same, embrace the difference in the other people because they can help enrich and enhance your life.
Yeah.
Think the
So,
whole Jerry Maguire, the you complete me thing. So the things I can't do,
yeah,
the other people can accomplish because that's what's natural for them.
absolutely. Yeah. So, of all of the things that you've done and become and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
The first response is mom. I've got two sons who are 23 and 24 at this point.
Yeah.
They've grown into amazing people. I wish I could say what I do made a difference in that. No, they were already grown by the time we found it. My goodness, I can't imagine who they might be if we had known that back then.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm quite proud of where my sons are, where their mindsets are, because we started embracing more of a positive mindset because I tend to be a pessimist and very negative. The glass isn't half empty, it's oh my God, it's almost gone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work in that area as they were a little on the younger side, and that has helped. I've seen them get into tight positions that were challenging emotionally. Probably a great example is the younger one. He had accepted a new job. He's a pilot. He was teaching for a flight school. It finished his last day at the flight school, was supposed to start with an airline the next day, or within like a week or so. Finished his last day, woke up the next morning to an email from that airline and said, we're not going to need you now. Your class is canceled. We'll
Oh,
let you know when the next class is available. So, of course, he spun out for a little bit because he just lost his income and now he's not going, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. But he didn't stay there very long. He quickly then kind of switched into problem solving. And instead of saying, oh my, woe is me, I can't do this, nobody wants me, he got into a mindset of, okay, now where do I need to go?
yeah,
Now what do I need to do? So,
yeah.
and yeah,
That's
took a
wonderful.
step back and went back to the flight school.
Yeah, sure, sure. So everyone out there sees you in a different light, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm still working on.
Yes.
Well, because I tend to still default negatively about myself. So when I say I'm still working on that, I am still a work in progress for that.
Yeah.
Uh, I am most critical of me than I am of anybody.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna sound bragging, but I don't really mean it to be. I'm highly intelligent. I was always raised as a smart kid. I was in a gifted program. So that's one thing I tend to cling to and I don't like to let go of.
Yeah.
It has been my identity for so long. Um, okay, so I got stuck there. What was the actual question again?
Just your idea, because everybody has these perceptions of you. Just ultimately what your perception is the one that's leading your
Okay.
life.
Okay. I I love my family. I love my friends. I do love having a community. I can be extremely friendly. I may be quiet in the beginning, especially if I'm in a group of people I don't know, to kind of get a feel for what's what. But I'm not shy. I will, as soon as I find a break in that conversation that I can add to, I
Yeah.
jump right in.
Yeah. Yeah. So if anyone wants to hire you, learn more about you, reach out, what's the good business? How do they do that?
So I'm still working on my own website. So at the moment, the best way to probably reach me would be through email,
Okay.
and it's kelly@kellyleitner.com.
Okay.
They could also text me that number. I don't know. Should I say a phone number on here?
If you want, yeah, that'd be
Okay.
a way. Yeah.
602 1736.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Kelly, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. It's fascinating the work you do. So thank you for opening up. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.